Sometimes we wonder why things don't come when we expect them. We pray, trust, fight, but it feels like everything stays the same. We get frustrated and think maybe something is wrong with us, maybe God has forgotten us or isn't listening. But the truth is, often the only thing happening is that it's simply not time yet, because yes, everything arrives at its proper time. While we wait, all we need to do is keep doing what's right, stay firm in faith, and trust that God is working silently beyond what we can see. There are moments when we feel exhausted, like we've been planting seeds for too long without a harvest, like every effort is in vain. But let me tell you this from the heart. No effort made in obedience to God is wasted. No tear falls without purpose. No step of faith goes unanswered. God is just, faithful, and always on time, not early, not late, but precisely when your heart is ready, when your hands are prepared, when your faith has matured enough to hold what you've been asking for. If you're hearing these words today, it's not by chance. This message is a confirmation of what your soul already sensed. God is still in control. That dream isn't dead. That promise still stands. What hurts today will become tomorrow's testimony. What overwhelms you today will become your miracle. While you do what you can, God is doing what you cannot. Many people can't go to church for various reasons: distance, complicated family situations, work, or simply not feeling at peace in any place. That's why this space exists. Here, you have a place of prayer, a corner where you can meet with God, whether you're at home, in your room, in a hospital, or in the quietest spot on earth. This is your virtual church, a refuge where your soul can breathe, strengthen, and connect with the eternal. If this message touches your heart, I invite you to do something simple yet powerful. Like this video, comment, and share it. Why? Because that helps reach others who truly need it, especially those without a church, without company, maybe looking for a sign from heaven. By doing that, you help bring hope to others, and trust me, that's a great blessing. Leave a comment with these 4 words. I trust your timing, God. Write it if you're willing to wait, trust, and walk in faith. Now, prepare your heart, because the end of this prayer could be the most special moment you'll live today. First truth, God's timing is not yours, but it's perfect. One of the hardest truths to accept when walking with God is that His clock doesn't work like ours. We count minutes, days, months, and years, waiting for that job, that healing, that change, that miracle, that something we feel we lack. When time passes without answers, something inside us starts to crack. We become impatient, insecure, even confused, as if God has forgotten the deal He made with us. But hear me well. The fact that you don't see results today doesn't mean God has said no. Sometimes His silence isn't a denial, it's just a necessary pause to prepare the ground. God knows things you don't, sees dangers you can't, and protects promises you're not yet ready to carry. It's not always about whether you deserve it or have prayed enough. Often, it's about whether you're prepared to receive what you asked for. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says it clearly, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven." That includes your dreams, desires, battles, and requests. Remember, God is not rushed. He doesn't move under human anxiety or pressure. He moves by purpose. While you're asking when, He's preparing the how, with whom, where, and why. He doesn't just want to give you something. He wants to teach you to care for what you're waiting for. If God gave you everything you're asking for right now, without first working on your heart, you might lose it, hurt yourself, or even hurt others. It's not just about receiving, but having the character to sustain the blessing. The waiting, the silence, the desert, they're not punishments, they're processes, each with divine purpose. Moses waited 40 years in the desert before his calling. David was anointed king, but waited years before sitting on the throne. Joseph had dreams of greatness, but went through a pit, slavery, and prison before reaching the palace. Do you see? They all lived the promise, but they also lived the process. The problem is we want the promise without going through the process, the immediate answer, as if God worked at the pace of our desires. But no, God doesn't work on impulse. He works with eternal conviction that makes us uncomfortable, but it shapes us. When you learn to wait in faith, to keep doing right while waiting, when you pray, trust, and move forward even when you see nothing, your faith strengthens, your character purifies, and your dependence is no longer on what you hope to receive, but on the one who promised it. So today I tell you firmly, don't despair, do what you need to do. Plant seeds even if you see no fruit. Pray even if you feel nothing. Get up even when you're tired. Forgive even if they don't deserve it. Keep doing good. Keep believing. Keep walking in integrity. Because all of that is sowing something that will soon bloom in God's perfect time. And when that day comes, you'll look back and thank God that it didn't arrive earlier. That it came when He knew it was the exact right moment. And on that day, you'll understand that it was all worth it, that every tear planted something eternal, that every prayer was heard, and that your faith was bigger than your impatience. Second truth, while you wait, do your part. Many people get stuck in the wait, as if the fact that God hasn't acted yet means there's nothing left to do, as if heaven worked only by magic and we had no role in it. But that's not faith. That's disguised passivity. Yes, everything comes at its proper time, but that doesn't mean you should sit back, arms crossed, waiting for something to fall from the sky. God's timing isn't just about waiting. It's about preparation, and you can't prepare if you're not moving. There's a big difference between waiting and being stuck. Waiting is staying firm but moving. It's trusting but also acting. It's praying but also obeying. It's having peace but also being responsible. If today you're waiting for something from God, let me ask you, what are you doing while you wait? Are you feeding your faith, your mind, your body, your relationships? Or are you just complaining every day about what hasn't arrived? Remember, waiting isn't an excuse for inaction. It's the best time to advance in other areas. While you wait for what you don't yet have, you can work on what you do have. You can improve your attitude, your character, your faithfulness, your commitment to God. You can keep sowing even if you see no fruit. You can keep praying even if you feel no answers. You can keep blessing even if you receive nothing in return. That's true faith. That's spiritual maturity. James 2:17 says, "Faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead." What does that mean? That it's not enough to say you trust God's timing if your life doesn't show it. Trust in God is seen in your daily behavior, in your decision to keep walking even when the path isn't clear, in your faithfulness, even when you don't yet have what you're hoping for. Many people say they're waiting on God, but in truth, they're hiding their fear of acting. They say they're waiting for a sign, but they're actually paralyzed by fear of failure. They say they want God to speak, but they're not willing to move until everything is perfect. Let me tell you this with love, but with firmness. If you're waiting for everything to be perfectly in place before you act, then you're not walking by faith. You're walking by sight. And faith doesn't work that way. God honors those who move, who work while they pray, who believe and obey at the same time, who do what they can, knowing God will do what only He can. Those who don't give up when doors don't open but keep knocking, trusting the right moment will come. Your part is not to change the timing. That belongs to God alone. Your part is to be faithful with what you have today, to keep your heart clean, to keep doing right even when no one notices, to love, serve, and grow even when you feel like you're walking in circles. Because none of that is wasted time. It's training, preparation, maturity. God isn't ignoring you. He's shaping you. He's not delaying His promise. He's developing your character. And that only happens through action, through obedience. So stop thinking there's nothing left to do. There's always something you can do today, even if it's small, even if no one sees it, even if it has no immediate results. Do what you need to do. Do it with love, excellence, and humility. Do it even when you're tired, even when you feel alone, even when no one applauds. Because when you do your part, God takes care of the impossible. And that's where the miracle happens. Not when you despair, but when you persevere. Not when you demand it, but when you trust it. Not when you give up, but when you stand firm, day after day, doing right, even if you don't yet see the fruit. The true test of faith happens in silence. Do you know when a person's faith is truly revealed? Not when everything is going well, not when prayers are quickly answered, not when doors open effortlessly, but when everything is silent. When there are no signs, no words, no evidence that anything is moving. It's in that moment you find out whether your trust is placed in God or in the results you hope to see. Anyone can trust when they understand, but trusting when you understand nothing, that's where a real relationship with God begins. It's easy to say God is good when you see His hand, but how hard it is to keep believing when you can't see it, when everything feels dark, when your heart fills with questions and heaven seems silent. This is where many people lose heart, thinking that if God is silent, He must not be listening. But that's not true. God's silence is not His absence. Sometimes it's His strategy. In silence, the foundations of your faith are strengthened. In silence, your intentions are purified. In silence, emotion is separated from conviction. In silence, you learn to keep walking, not by what you feel, but by what you know. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." It's not about feeling, it's about being convinced. It's about saying, God is with me even if you don't feel His embrace. It's about declaring, God is faithful, even when you don't yet see results. It's about standing up and obeying, even when it seems like nothing is happening. Because in that silence, God is watching. He's watching to see if your heart remains steadfast, if your voice continues to seek His, if your soul keeps saying, even if I don't see Him, I still believe. Did you realize that when Jesus was led into the desert to be tempted, He didn't hear a single word from the Father during those 40 days? He was alone. No signs, no voices from heaven. But every time the enemy tempted Him, Jesus responded with the word. That's faith. That's knowing who you are, even when everything around you says the opposite. That's trust, even when heaven seems silent. So how do you respond in the silence? Do you drift away? Do you complain? Do you fill with anger? Or do you use that moment to cling even tighter to what God has already promised? Listen, silence is not wasted time. It's fertile ground for faith. It's sacred space where God observes whether you're faithful only when He blesses or also when He doesn't. Many people stop praying because they feel God isn't answering. They stop going to church, stop reading the Bible, stop seeking His presence because they grow tired of not seeing change. But they don't realize they're in the most important moment. The place where faith matures, grows, deepens, and becomes real and firm, not just emotional and temporary. So if today you feel you're sitting in uncomfortable silence, if it seems your prayers bounce off the ceiling and no signal comes, don't think God has left. Remember, He's working. And while you wait, He's giving you the chance to develop rock-solid, unbreakable faith. Keep praying, keep believing, keep obeying, even when everything is silent. Because sometimes heaven stays silent, not to punish you, but to teach you to walk by faith, not by sight. Here's something critical. Constant obedience opens invisible doors. When we talk about trusting God's timing, we often forget that obedience is an active part of waiting. It's not passive. It's not just saying, it'll happen eventually, while living as if nothing matters. Obedience is the language of faith. It's how we show God, with actions, not just words, that we truly believe in Him, even when we don't yet see what we're hoping for. And here's the deep truth. Obedience often doesn't make sense. God tells you to keep planting seeds even when the ground looks dry, to keep loving even when love isn't returned, to keep praying even when you don't feel His presence, to keep forgiving even when the wound is still open. And you wonder why. Why keep doing the right thing if nothing changes? Why keep trying if there are no results? That's the test. That's the greatness of faith. Obeying when you understand is easy. Obeying when everything goes well is comfortable. But obeying when you see no fruit, when no one recognizes your efforts, when it even feels like you're wasting time, that's what separates weak faith from strong faith. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark in a place where it didn't rain, gave him detailed instructions, measurements, timelines, materials, and Noah obeyed day after day without seeing a single drop of rain. People looked at him like he was crazy, mocked him, pointed fingers, but he kept hammering, cutting wood, building the ark. Why? Because he trusted the voice that spoke to him more than the voices that mocked him. He knew that if God said it would rain, even under a perfectly blue sky. That's the kind of obedience that opens invisible doors. Every faithful act you make today, even if no one sees it, is building something that tomorrow will become your refuge, your miracle, your answer. Every right decision you make, even if it brings no immediate result, is planting seeds in the spiritual realm, speaking on your behalf before heaven, aligning things you cannot see. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." Do you see? In due season. And the only requirement is, don't give up. Keep going. Keep standing firm when everything inside you wants to quit, because that's where true miracles happen. Here's something many need to hear. You don't have to understand everything to obey. Sometimes you'll walk without maps, without explanations, without answers. And that's not weakness, that's faith. That's what God is looking for. People who trust without guarantees, who don't demand to understand every step before they take it. Because if He asked you, if He's guiding you, then you can trust Him. His word is more secure than any circumstance. So if today you're doing the right thing but see no change, hear this with all my heart. Don't stop. Don't give up. Don't think it's in vain. God sees your obedience. He doesn't ignore what you do in secret. He doesn't forget the sacrifices you make out of love for Him. And at just the right moment, at the perfect time only He knows, He will open the door you've been waiting for, a door that doesn't open by human force, by connections or by luck, but by heaven itself, with a key that has your name on it. And you're building that key every time you obey without understanding, every time you keep walking without seeing, every time you choose to do good, even when it costs you. And remember this, what God has promised does not expire. One of the most common thoughts when time passes and we see no answers is this: maybe it's not going to happen anymore. Doubt creeps in, that silent voice whispering that the moment has passed, that the promise was just a nice thought, that maybe you misunderstood or weren't worthy of receiving it. And without realizing it, that voice starts draining you inside, stealing your joy, weakening your faith, making you walk without hope. But listen carefully and please engrave this in your heart. What God promised does not expire, does not run out, does not lose power over time. If God said He'll do it, He will. It doesn't matter how many years pass, how many times you've failed, or if your circumstances have changed. God's word remains. His promise stands firm. It's not bound by human time. It's bound to His perfect will. Look at Abraham. God promised him a son when he was already old and his wife was barren. From any point of view, it was impossible. Science said no. Logic said no. Reality said no. But God said yes. And when God says yes, no barrier can stop it. Years passed. Abraham had moments of doubt. He made mistakes, took wrong steps. But you know what? God didn't withdraw His promise. He didn't say, because you doubted, it's over. No. The promise remained alive because God isn't ruled by human impulses. He fulfills what He says, even if we wobble along the way. And that applies to you too. that word God gave you, that dream He planted in your heart, that vision He showed you while you were praying or worshiping. It's not fantasy, it's an eternal design. And even if you can't explain it now, even if it seems the opportunity has passed, even if everyone tells you to forget it, stand firm. Because God doesn't work by human clocks, He works by purpose. If you still don't see it, it's because He's still aligning everything to arrive at the exact moment. Isaiah 55:11 says, "So shall my word be that goes out from my mouth. It shall not return to me empty, but shall accomplish that which I purpose, and shall succeed in the thing for which I sent it." That word is still alive, still active, even if you've grown tired, even if your faith has dimmed, even if the landscape looks dry. God's promise doesn't depend on your emotions, it depends on His faithfulness. Sometimes the promise delays because God is protecting you. Yes, you heard that right. If it arrived too soon, it might destroy you. You might become proud, start trusting more in the gift than the giver, or abandon the process that's shaping you. That's why God waits, because His goal isn't just to give you things, it's to transform you into someone who can carry them without losing your heart. So don't be deceived by that voice saying it's too late. It's not. With God, it's never too late. He's never late. He's always right on time. If you still don't see it, it's not because He's forgotten you. It's because He's still writing your story. And when the time comes to fulfill that promise, you'll understand why it didn't come earlier. Because you weren't ready, because it wasn't time yet, because some things still needed to be removed. But now the time has come, and when it happens, it will be so clear, so perfect, so precise, that you'll know only God could have done it. And you'll look back and say, it was worth the wait. It was worth trusting. It was worth not giving up. What God does in secret will be revealed in public. Many are waiting for everything God is preparing in their lives to become visible right away, for others to recognize their process, for the fruits of their obedience to be immediately visible, for their efforts to bring applause-worthy results. But God's kingdom doesn't move by appearances. It moves by depth. And what's deep, real, and lasting almost always starts in secret. God is an expert at working in the hidden places, in what no one sees, in what's not shared on social media or talked about in conversations. He shapes hearts in intimacy. He refines character in the silent night. He strengthens your spirit when no one is near except Him. And all those things that seem invisible, that seem to have no weight, they are actually what's preparing you the most. Think of David. He was anointed king while still a young shepherd tending sheep in the hidden fields. No one knew him. No one imagined the future king was in that simple place, surrounded by animals holding a staff. But there he was, in anonymity, in solitude, being shaped by God in secret. And when his moment came, when everything aligned, he was called to face Goliath. And that day, what God had been building in silence was revealed in public. That's what will happen with you. Everything you're living through in silence, the process you're enduring that no one knows about, the faith you're holding on to even when no one acknowledges it, the obedience you repeat day after day without seeing results, all of it carries eternal weight. Because when God opens the door, He also reveals your faithfulness, not to show it off, but to use it as a testimony of what He can do with someone who let themselves be shaped in secret. That kind of worship carries immense weight. That's exactly what Job did in the midst of pain, in the midst of loss, when he had lost everything. The first thing he did was bow down and worship. He didn't demand explanations, didn't ask for reasons, didn't complain. He said, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." That kind of worship, not based on what's been received, but based on who God is, moves the heart of heaven. There's a kind of faith that doesn't ask, but simply surrenders. A faith that recognizes God is worthy, not because of what He does, but because of who He already is. When you reach that level of faith, When you can look up to heaven with tears in your eyes and still say, I praise you, I bless you, I trust you. That's mature worship. Worship from the Spirit. Worship with your whole being. Psalm 34:1 says, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. At all times, not just in the good, but in the hard, in the waiting, when everything seems on pause. That's the key. Keeping praise alive even when you don't feel like it, even when you don't understand, because worship connects you beyond circumstances. There's a supernatural strength that's only activated when you choose to honor God in the valley, not just on the mountaintop. When you worship while waiting, something breaks in the spiritual realm. The enemy gets confused because he expects to see you complain, give up, close your Bible, walk away, curse your process. But when instead you raise your hands and say, Lord, even if I can't see it, I know you're working. That's a direct blow against all darkness. That's spiritual power, that's authority, that's transformational faith. If you're in a season of waiting, worship. Even if you don't understand, even if you don't feel anything, even if it seems useless, because that worship is a fragrance rising to the throne of God. It's a sign that your faith stands firm. It's also a declaration. My soul is still waiting, not with anxiety, but with trust, because I know in whom I have believed. Blessings that come in their right time are the ones that last. Some blessings people get by taking shortcuts, by manipulating, by forcing things that aren't ready yet. But those blessings usually don't last because they're built not on God's will, but on human anxiety. But the blessings that come at the proper time, the ones waited for with patience, prayer, obedience, tears, those are the ones that remain. They don't shake in the wind, they don't break under pressure, they don't disappear at the first problem. God doesn't want to give you something just for you to enjoy a moment. He wants to give you something that lasts, something that builds, something that bears fruit, something that glorifies His name. That's why sometimes He waits, because it's not just about giving you a gift, it's about building something with you that has roots. Some people forced relationships that weren't part of God's purpose just because they didn't want to wait. And they ended up hurt, empty, further from their destiny. Others jumped into jobs, businesses, major decisions without consulting God, and what seemed like an open door turned into a trap. Not everything that comes is a blessing, and not everything that shines comes from God. Proverbs 10:22 says, "The blessing of the Lord makes rich, and He adds no sorrow with it." That means when God gives you something, it doesn't come with hidden pain, regret, or destructive consequences. It comes with peace, joy, stability, purpose, because it doesn't come from emotion, it comes from heaven. What's amazing is that when something arrives in God's perfect time, you don't have to fight to hold on to it. You don't have to exhaust yourself to make it work. You don't have to manipulate or chase after it. It simply flows because God Himself planted it in your path. And what God plants, He sustains. Sometimes we want to move forward by our own strength to speed up God's clock, but no, God doesn't move by pressure. He moves by preparation. He knows when you're ready, and not only that, He knows when the environment is ready, because some blessings don't depend only on you. They also depend on other people, situations, doors that need to open. And if they're not ready yet, God would rather you wait than give you something incomplete. Think of Jesus. He knew from a young age what His purpose was, that He had a mission, that He would die for us, but He didn't run out to fulfill it. He waited until age 30, living in anonymity, working in the everyday, living hidden. And when the moment came, heaven opened, and the Father said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." That's when the ministry that changed human history began, all in its due time. So if you feel like you're on pause, like you're ready, but nothing's happening, like you've done all you were supposed to do, but you see no results, don't think you're being ignored. You're being prepared to receive something. that won't just be for you, but will bless others too. When something arrives in God's time, it doesn't just change your life, it impacts everyone around you. Remember, what comes before time can destroy you, but what comes in its time builds you, strengthens you, lifts you up, and above all glorifies God. The enemy will try to distract you right before your time arrives. One of the enemy's most subtle tactics is to make you give up right before the moment God already marked for you. He knows he can't stop what God has decreed, but what he can try is to distract you, discourage you, exhaust you, so that you'll be the one to let go before it's time, so that you abandon the promise just steps away from reaching it, so that out of frustration, fatigue, or doubt, you disconnect from what was about to manifest. What's most dangerous is that these distractions often don't look negative. They look like reasonable alternatives, good opportunities, people giving logical advice, quicker paths promising the same destination without so much pain. But they don't tell you that those shortcuts turn into disguised traps. Look at what happened to Jesus before he began his ministry. He was led into the desert, and there the enemy came, not with threats but with offers. He offered him bread when he was hungry, offered him fame, offered him glory, everything a natural man might want. But Jesus didn't give in because he understood something you and I must remember every day. What comes from God doesn't need shortcuts. What comes from God doesn't ask you to compromise your values. What comes from God comes with peace. If Jesus was tempted right before his manifestation, what makes us think we won't face the same? The strongest temptations don't come when you're far from your promise. They come when you're closest to seeing it fulfilled, because that's when the enemy throws his last darts. He knows that if he keeps you distracted, busy, disconnected, impatient, he can make you abandon the race right at the finish line. Galatians 5:7 says, "You were running well. Who hindered you from obeying the truth?" That hindrance could be a voice of doubt, a distracting relationship, a poorly handled emotion, a lie that slipped into your mind, a distraction disguised as an opportunity. That's why it's so important to stay alert, to discern, to pray, to go back to the secret place and ask God, is this from you? Did you chart this path? Because if you're not vigilant, you can end up settling for something lesser just because you got tired of waiting for something greater. You can end up settling for a job that doesn't fulfill you, a relationship that doesn't build you up, a life that doesn't reflect your calling, just because the process took too long. But you weren't born for that. You weren't created for a mediocre life, but for a life of purpose. So when you see distractions multiplying, when everything around you feels confusing, when you feel an urgent desire to run toward anything, stop, breathe, pray. Listen to God's voice, because you might be closer to your moment than you think. And that's exactly why the enemy is trying to get you to take a detour. Don't fall for it. Don't let go of the promise. Don't grab the first thing just to ease the momentary void. Wait for what God designed, because when it comes, you'll know every second of the struggle, every tear, every night of prayer, every resisted temptation was worth it. What God has for you is real, eternal, and above all, perfect.